What happens when a group of paranormal investigators start a conversation? You get Ghosts of the Coast Paranormal, the podcast, tales of the dead, the bizarre, and all things supernatural. Join us now as we discuss the urban legend of the Black Eyed Kids. Hi, and welcome back to Ghosts of the Coast Paranormal, the podcast. I'm Erin,
I'm Linnea.
I'm Deborah.
and today we are discussing Black Eyed Kids. So, spirit, human alien hybrid, silly pranks, or something more sinister. Have you guys ever heard of Black Eyed Kids before?
Absolutely.
A little bit.
Yeah. Well, today you're going to learn a little bit more, thanks to the internet. So,
Educate us. We're sponges.
yeah. So, how are y'all doing today? First of all,
Good. How about you?
doing well.
Doing good.
Doing well. It's been a crazy day, but
Been a crazy few days.
crazy. Yes.
Especially for you.
Yes, definitely, especially for you. So yeah, we'll just get right into it. So black-eyed kids are typically described as children or teenagers ranging from the ages of 6 to 16.
Mm-hmm.
So the scary years. And if y'all have anything to add to it, just jump right in. They typically have pale features, and their clothing is often not of the current time.
Dated.
Very dated. I did not know this, but oftentimes there's a moldy smell attributed to them.
Really?
Yeah. Just like the smell of like mold or
Makes sense.
dirt
Yeah.
or just grunge smell. And then, of course, where they get their namesake, pitch black eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Could you imagine, first of all, seeing somebody that has no whites around their eyes?
No, I walked up on a guy in Walmart actually. Some freaky things that had the colored contacts,
Yeah.
and he didn't
yeah.
have any whites in his eyes, and they were like the snake eyes, where it was just like the little slits, and it. No.
And they
that's
say they're really
freaky.
uncomfortable when people wear
Yeah, I
those.
couldn't imagine
freaky.
wearing them. And just a heads up for everybody watching or listening, we do have a special guest today. It is my dog.
Miss
She's
Blanche.
Miss Blanche. She has decided to hang out with us, so you might hear her collar.
Or see her
or see her
nose.
on camera. She said, "Oh, you're talking about me." Anyway, so back into it. Again, we get sidetracked if you've already
Squirrel.
watched last week's episode. Yes, we get sidetracked often, especially me. Anyway, back at it. So it's said that those who have encountered black-eyed children or black-eyed kids, BEK for the abbreviation, those who have encountered them are often left feeling just completely filled with fear and dread and terror, which to me sounds a little bit demonic.
Yeah, very much.
Well, I was reading too that once they do appear, people complain of actual physical illnesses and accidents and stuff happening too.
And in fact, many people, religions, cultures, all of the above, tend to believe that they are the spawn of Satan himself. So we're starting on a kind of a dark path, but
Well, there are some other conspiracists that think that they're aliens or vampires too.
Aliens, vampires, government experiments.
Gone wrong.
Yeah.
Agent
Agent
Orange.
Orange, yeah. So oftentimes they are encountered hitchhiking or just loitering in random empty streets. The most common occurrence, though, is knocking on your door or your window. Usually asking to come in or to do something, like have you do something, or in some of the cases, if they're encountered on a empty street, they're often stalking you, just quietly creeping behind you. Yeah. So, I mean, how terrifying would that be imagine you are walking in an empty parking lot, for example, and you see at the other end of the parking lot, say it's like 11 o'clock at night, you're just getting off work, whatever. You got an empty parking lot, you're walking to your car, and you see this person on the other end. And by the time you get into your car, they're at your car window just,
let me in.
Yeah, like.
Well, first off, this is the South, and I pack and carry. So I'm going to be shooting. However,
shoot first, ask questions.
Yeah, a bullet's not going to do any good if it's going to go through them.
Yeah. So, so the encounters often follow similar patterns. So, as mentioned before, it's always a teen, a child or a teen. They will appear at your car or at your house, knocking on your doors and windows, asking to come in, be let in, claiming they need to use a phone.
And it's typically pretty late in
the evening, yeah. Or needing a ride home. And in some cases, I found that in some cases, the terms, the vocabulary that they use is not of this time either.
Right, they'll ask to use the phonograph.
The telegraph, and they always appear as innocent children. And we don't know if, the fact that they are children is what they're using to try and entice you to let them in.
Well, these people aren't smart because there are no innocent children.
But they'll act shy. This goes back to the innocent child. They'll act shy. They'll
very bashful.
Very bashful. Yeah. They'll tend to hide their faces. And then it's not until later on in the interaction where typically they'll look up and you'll see that they have no whites on their eyes. And if somebody refuses to let them in, which typically seems to be the case, like, I'm not letting that thing in. Mm-hmm. There's no way I'm letting that thing in. I don't know you. Why are you at my house? They'll become more and more agitated and aggressive with their demands. But the good news, there is good news for this. They cannot come in until you allow them, until you give permission.
So now that being said, obviously that's why people get the correlation with vampires. What do you think about that?
Suke. It sounds an awful lot like the background of a vampire, but
although you don't typically see vampire children unless it's a ruse.
But it could be an adult as the guise of a child.
Yeah. Right. Well, then it comes into the whole paranormal thing where, you get evil entities disguising themselves as children.
Mm-hmm. And that's often the case. It's not every case that, we've not experienced anything like that. And typically if we've experienced a child, there is a way to kind of, it's going back to the paranormal field is when you're in a location that has a little bit more heavy negative feeling, such as cemetery, then like the child entity that we encountered at the Opera House. Like, we know that was truly a child because we never once felt fear or.
Well, I feel the same way for the cemetery. What was Ruby and I think another boy up front. That was I didn't ever feel safe.
What I was referring to was the wood line, where we can kind of differentiate between what feels positive versus what feels.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So a lot of people also think that BEKs are a bad omen or a bringer of death for those who have encountered. And then
now, is that only if you let them in?
That I don't know. I would assume so. Based on some of the encounters that I have.
Send us your comments.
Yeah, let us know. But often suffer severe illnesses or other tragedies after an encounter. And then I found this funny because it was from a British tabloid, but back in 2014, they had posted, quote, "shock rise in sightings around the world," end quote. And that was all to do with black-eyed kids. So which is funny that a tabloid kind of caught on to that. So I just thought that was funny.
Most of my research carried us over to England.
Really?
I only read about the one pub.
The black-eyed children. One of them was, I wrote it down.
Like that's interesting.
Cannock Chase is like a forest area over there. And they were, so from what I read on, I think it was the Mail was the name of it.
So another British tabloid.
Another British tabloid, yeah. That it was very common for them to see a black-eyed child that comes roughly about 6 years old, a little girl.
Really?
And they what year that was?
Real recent. Okay. It was real recent, but it's been going on since 1960, I think it was.
Okay.
1996 is the first published thing, it looked like.
That's what I got.
The reporter from Texas.
Yep.
And he actually ended up writing some kind of fact sheet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can understand you have sightings for all those years.
Right.
And nobody says anything.
Like Bigfoot.
You don't want to be
or like the paranormal,
crazy.
Or like ghosts.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to be known as crazy, and you don't
even in today's
you might not want to talk about it after you.
Like, I'm done.
Away.
Yeah. Don't think about it. It
didn't happen.
Yeah.
If it didn't happen, if I didn't see it, it's not. No.
Yeah.
Yeah. I that's interesting because most of my research, was all U.S. based. So that's interesting that yours took you across the pond. But I do have the origin story. I know, just like with anything, it's gonna be. Sorry, my dog's building a nest over there. But like with anything, it's gonna be obviously this could have been going on for years and nobody reported it. So I'm calling this, the origin story because this is the first documented case of black-eyed kids. And this was by a Texas reporter, Brian Bethel, in 1996. So his encounter goes as follows, and the full encounter can be found at texashillcountry.com. So
we can add the link on our
definitely. So it was late at night, and the reporter had pulled over into the movie theater to work on some paperwork. I think they said he was writing a check, which is kind of an odd place to pull over and write a check, if you ask me. But being deeply involved in what he was doing, he didn't realize that two boys had approached his car. And the older boy just tapped on his window, and the reporter said that he felt, quote, soul-racking fear just from that tap. I mean, we've been into some freaky places, but I don't think I've ever felt anything just.
Well, you might if you saw a black-eyed child. Look at you in one
I'd
of
be
those
feeling
locations.
a lot of things.
I'd probably be feeling in the best athletic endurance I have ever felt because
what was her name? Florence Joyner.
Yeah,
Was that her name? The runner.
Oh man,
leave her back there.
So
that might be where the term "eat my dust."
Yeah, right. So the boys, in fact, I think it was the older boy that asked if Bethel could give them a ride home because they had forgotten their money for the movie. And this, I would be out of there at this particular moment if I was not. All right. The boys assured him that, quote, this is the moment, quote, it wouldn't take long. They were just two kids and that they didn't have a gun, end quote.
Yeah, I read
what?
that. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
I would be like, nope, see ya. So obviously he was shaken by this, as anyone would be. But he continued to talk to them. He said, quote, the last showing of the film they wanted to see had already started, and it would be nearly over by the time he could drive them anywhere and get back, end quote. So, I mean, just that, I would not even stick around.
Yeah, there's too many key words that says no, Deborah.
No, thank you. Yeah, no, thank you. That is red flag all around. I would be taking off so fast. And then once he kind of broke eye contact with them, is when the fear really, truly set on for him. Because that was when he noticed that their eyes were just completely black.
So it does seem like people tend to continue conversations just from like a couple podcasts that I've listened to and whatnot. I wonder if their voices are almost like a siren song. Like,
right. Well, and that's the thing too, is oftentimes people with encounters will say, I couldn't move. I couldn't. It was like it was like they had to fight against it.
It's almost like paralyzing them.
Right. They said it was like, it wasn't until after they break that hypnosis that they're filled with this fear. And I mean, I'll be honest with you, if somebody knocks on my door at 2:00 in the morning, I am not answering it.
Yeah, it could be a sweet looking old lady limping, not opening that door.
I don't care who it is at 2:00. If you're knocking on my door at 2:00 in the morning, you better be one of my children, and you better be screaming, "Mama, it's me, it's me."
Yeah, like don't come to my door at 2:00 in the morning. I mean,
when I started doing a little bit of research last week, while we were at my son's house in Columbia, Thursday night at 1:00. Friday morning, somebody knocked on the front door.
Nope. It was a black-eyed child.
We were trying to sleep, and somebody knocked on the front door. I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, God, oh my God, is it a black-eyed child? And I wanted to ask my husband and my other son, I'm like, is it a black-eyed child? Do they have black eyes? Does it look like a kid, maybe 6 to 16 years old? I didn't.
Older clothes.
To say, but yeah, that was the first thing that popped in my mind.
So on that note, I wonder, because like you were saying, there's a lot more scenes now, if there's anything anyone has on like a Ring camera.
That would be interesting.
A Ring camera.
Yeah, that would be interesting. If you have an encounter with a black-eyed child and you got it on your Ring camera, send it to us.
Yeah.
We would love to see it.
Yeah, I'm going to have to do a little digging online for that.
Yeah. Well, a couple, probably last summer, we had a guy here in the neighborhood, and we knew it was a guy because it was captured on the Ring camera. And it wasn't a teenager, so it was an adult. But he was running through, knocking on people's windows. But here's the weird thing about that. So he was running through, knocking on people's windows. However, my neighborhood has a Facebook page, and a lot of people were posting, just had a guy knock on my window, and I'm on this street.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody was like, yeah, I just had a guy knock on my window. And it was like 2 minutes later. And he's like, and I'm on this street. And so the first street was like up at the front of the neighborhood. The second street was back here. But it seemed the way, it was weird because the way it seemed was, it was like 1 second after another.
Well, it could be a group of kids messing around, but that would be strange for your neighborhood because you have so many cops.
Yeah, we have so many cops, and I mean, we really don't have that many kids in the neighborhood. But
she's got the hiccups.
She's got the hiccups. Or is that tissue?
No.
But yeah, so it was just a weird coincidence because all of the houses within the same time were just getting knocked on the windows.
Right.
So I know we know it was one person, but for him to run from there all the way here seems kind of weird.
It was the same person?
It was the same person, yeah. Maybe
on something.
Maybe.
Would have to be.
Have to be on. It's like speed was how fast he's running. But anyway. So upon breaking eye contact with the boys, Bethel was just filled with just fear, just noticing that their eyes had become completely black. I mean, imagine how terrifying this is. 11 o'clock. I mean, I'm just throwing a time out there. 11 o'clock at night. You're sitting there in your car doing paperwork, which first of all is a weird time to be sitting in your car in an empty parking lot doing paperwork. But to each their own. So, I mean, that's just terrifying that these kids just, but also like if it was normal kids, wouldn't you think stranger danger would be a thing?
Not anymore.
Really?
Mm-mm.
I think I would be more afraid of them being on my front step than a car.
Yeah.
Once you feel like they know where you live.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in a car, you kind of have the control as well.
Maybe. I mean, unless you're that paralyzed that you can't go anywhere.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you kind of have the control in a car. Like you can press the go button and get out of there.
If they don't take control of that.
If they don't hog up the energy when the car doesn't start.
So do you think that they are like
energy vampires?
Yeah.
It's possible.
Yeah. I mean,
well, everything runs on energy, so.
That's true. Oh, new theory. So they are vampires. They're just energy vampires. But I don't know. I don't recall seeing any reports where like they felt drained afterwards. Because you would think an energy vampire, regardless of the situation, would.
Maybe not though, because your adrenaline, like you have the whole fear factor going on.
That's true. So, anyway, back at it again. So when Bethel refused to give it, like kept refusing, said, no, I can't do it. The older boy became more agitated, like just more aggressive, and then stating that, we can't get into your car unless you said it was okay. And it was after that moment that comment was said that he just got out of there. Finally, he got out of there. Took a little bit of time, but he got out of there. So I mean, that would just be so scary to me, to just have somebody, a child, especially just constantly being like, we're just two kids. Let me in. We're just two kids. We don't have a gun. We can't get in unless you say it's okay.
Why would you feel the need to tell me you don't have a gun?
Right. Like, that's just kind of...
Right there, you're like, nope, done.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna, you might not, but I do.
Yeah, like, I'm not messing with that.
Yeah, no.
So, yeah, it's a little...
If you felt the need to tell me that, then there's definitely something up.
Yeah, definitely,
Mhm.
definitely something. This is where all of my 7 pages came from.
What else you got?
All kinds of encounters. Y'all ready?
Yeah.
Let's go.
All right, so let's get into some encounters. So the first 3 encounters come from thoughtcatalog.com.
Come from what?
Thoughtcatalog.com. Encounter number 1 is submitted by a user named Big Taco 123. And they're kind of, some of them are kind of long, I will say that. But but the last one is kind of, you'll just see. So Big Taco 123 says, quote, on March 17th, 2008, I had my one and only encounter with a black-eyed kid. Before my experience, I had never heard anything having to do with the black-eyed kids. I was 12. I was sitting outside of a hairdresser in an old Chevy pickup waiting for my mom to get her hair cut. About 15 minutes had passed, and I saw some kid walking back and forth along the sidewalk in front of my parked car. At first, I thought I recognized him as one of my friends from school, so I banged on the front windshield until he looked my way. It was not anyone I knew. So at this point, I was not scared at all. Not yet. The boy walked over to the side of my car and just stares. I think to let me get a good look at his eyes, to freak me out. Let me tell you, if you have never seen a black-eyed kid, you have no idea what to imagine. Pupils black as the night sky. The boy whispers, "You must let me in." And then I lock the car doors and duck down into the space between the seats. 5 minutes later, he was gone. When my mother got into the car, she told me a boy with black eyes had come into the hairdresser and insisted for my mother to give him the keys to the car. She refused. Thank God she did. End quote.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Well, so the first thing I note here, this sounds like this was daytime.
Sounds like it was daytime.
Have you come across anything else that?
Nothing else states daytime. But yeah, so that's kind of why I chose that one, and because it seemed like daytime and it had to do with a vehicle. So the parking lot did not sound like it was empty. I mean, especially for it being daytime.
And it's also interesting because it's not just one person seeing them. If they go to the mother, and I'm sure the people in the salon must have saw.
Well, here's my question. It's earlier you were saying that it said something about they had to be invited in.
Mm-hmm.
How did he go into the beauty shop?
Did he actually go in, or did he stand at the doorway?
Okay.
I mean, could have
Good question.
Could have stood at the doorway and said, "Hey, I need the keys to whoever's truck that is."
Yeah.
It could also be public locations are different than a residence.
Yeah. However, I have another encounter, but not here. I'll have to find it, and I could read it if you want. But there's another encounter that has to do with a public location, and it's like a gas station, and they couldn't come in there. So
again, on that encounter, is it multiple people seeing?
In that one, it was 2 people.
Interesting. Because you don't really hear it to be a factual thing. You know, it's an urban legend.
Right.
It's paranormal. But if you have multiple people seeing them at one time, I don't know, you'd think there'd be some more solid.
Well, I mean, too, you think of it like Bigfoot. Multiple people have seen Bigfoot. Some have even captured him on camera. But I find it very ironic that every single picture is grainy. But I mean, seriously, like multiple people have seen Bigfoot. So would we think that there would be more factual or more?
All the pictures too have been blown up and zoomed in,
right?
And, you know, the pixels
Show
are
me a
messed
real
up.
picture.
Well, and I was actually just listening to Damien's podcast on the way over here, and he was doing a roundtable.
Life Beyond 6 Feet.
Yeah, check him out.
Check him out.
They were talking about it, and Damien was basically saying the same thing. Like, you know, he can't get himself to believe in Bigfoot because there's not enough solid evidence.
Right.
Why aren't people taking pictures with their cell phones? And his guest kind of made the point, like, listen, my kid had a dance last night and I was trying to take a picture and couldn't get a picture. So now you have people in a woods who are not expecting something to come at them, and they're scared something's coming at them. Like, how hard is it to, try to get your phone out, get a picture?
Yeah. I mean, it's yeah. I mean, fear. Yeah, especially if these people are taken over by fear. Are they gonna think, he's like, I was just writing my checks. Well, let me take it was 96, so he didn't have a camera on his phone. Didn't have a phone. So, I mean, people are gonna think, this person's at my door. Although, here's another side note is we live in a day and age where every single person, regardless of whatever incident it is, automatically pulls out a cell phone.
I was just going to say, when you were doing your research, did you put black-eyed kids in TikTok and see if anything comes up?
No, I didn't.
Did you?
I'm going to right now.
Yeah.
And if we find anything, we'll share the link.
Okay, so we just scoured the TikTok.
Because
that's where we go for factual evidence. No, we were just searching because, like we said, with today's day and age, why hasn't there been, where people are pulling out their phones for everything, carrying down the street, they're pulling out their phones because she said something about their garbage can. People pull their phones out for everything. So why hasn't there been documentation of any sort of these late night visitors? Is it because they are able to hypnotize somebody or put them into like a trance? Or is it because people are just too scared to pull out their phones? I mean, especially if it's a daytime, like some of these happens in the daytime. You would think that, like me, I know I'm personally fine to walk through a parking lot in the day versus at night, unless it's to Walmart, because God knows I hate Walmart. But I mean, it's just kind of it brings an interesting twist to things, because some of the reports have stated that, and I think I mentioned earlier, when they say stuff, it is very repetitive.
Well, and this said it would come in a sing-song voice.
Yeah, is it like a siren call? So it's just very...
Well, again, going back to the whole vampire thing, wasn't that the same thing kind of in some of the movies? Like when the vampire talks, it's, with like...
Well, yeah, I mean, it's Twilight. They're like, everything about me invites you in. And, I mean, True Blood, you got Suke. I mean, God, I love that show.
I miss that show.
God, it's such a good one. But I mean, yeah, like their vampires are known to be seducers. And so if these are vampires, shapeshifters, there's a lot of theories that could play here. Even skinwalkers, really. I mean, a lot of that plays into...
What about the alien take? What do you think about that?
Me personally, I don't think aliens.
I don't either.
No. I've not come across anything, throughout.
Yeah.
Researching anything paranormal or just unexplainable, where aliens take on a human form or something.
Right.
Right. Well, I mean, I know the theory is, and we'll cover this more in our UFO segment or segments, but I know the theory of the alien human hybrid. Essentially they want to populate the earth with their kind, and
a bunch of little Martians.
Yeah. Like a Marvin the Martian.
Yes.
riding around their little spaceship. Um, but this feels, I mean, for me, this feels more, the description feels more supernatural than UFOs or
Yeah.
aliens.
And dark. I don't.
Yeah.
When I think
Yeah,
UFOs, I don't actually
yeah.
think of anything dark.
No.
But hold that thought because we'll get to that in the
Okay.
discussion. So we're going to continue on with our encounters. Again, this is encounter number 2. Comes from thoughtcatalog.com. Submitted by No Sleep 2012. So it's a little dated, but that's okay.
Could have said no sleep till Sunday.
I mean,
No
that
sleep.
sounds about right for me. All right, so quote, "It almost felt like a dream. I woke up to my dog Lucy barking. She was upright on the bed where my husband and I were sleeping with our 22-month-old daughter. Staring at our door like an unknown stranger was out there rummaging around. I thought she was freaking out over the house noise or over a house noise. We had only had her for 3 months and she was still a puppy. It could have been anything. Our roommate, a creak from the house settling, the awnings moving outside in the breeze. I wasn't too concerned initially." That part right there, initially. I mean, in other side note, end quote, other reports have said, at the initial knocking or at the initial tapping, it's not concerning. It's till they see them and open that door. Anyway.
Well, and as they become more aggressive.
Yeah. Okay, back at it. Quote, "I decided the best bet would be to open the door and show her nothing was there. It sounds a bit silly, but it's what we do with our daughter when she gets scared. And I figured it would work with a puppy too. I opened the door and she raced to the front door. She stood there snarling at the door. It was an angry, violent growl, one I had never heard her make before. I looked over groggily at her and opened the baby gate, blocking the doorway. Planning to open the door, I show her everything was okay. The second my hand reached for the deadbolt, Lucy went wild. She started barking and jumped towards me. And when I touched the metal, she suddenly changed her temper. She whimpered, almost like she was afraid and backing down. As her mannerisms changed, so did mine. I wasn't calm anymore. My heart was racing and sinking at the same time. I had been flooded with a mixture of fear and dread. I looked through the peephole, and I can't explain why I looked, but I did. Outside were 2 kids.
So do they come in pairs?
I was just going to ask that.
It seems so. One was just a smidgen shorter than me and didn't look much younger. I'm 21. She looked to be 16 or 17. She was slender and pale. Her hair was a light shade of honey blonde, and she wore it long, about mid back, with a long, thin, blunt bangs in the front that covered most of her eyes. She wore jeans and a light wash that is very popular now. So this was back in 2012. Light wash that was very popular now, and a thin-looking olive-colored pullover hoodie. She held the hand of a small girl who looked to be around 3 or 4. In the same style jeans and a button-down ivory cardigan, the smaller one looked at the floor shyly, but had the same shade of hair tied back in a ponytail. She had a stuffed toy under her free arm, and it was identical to the one my daughter has, as was their style of dress." So, end quote on that. So that right there is not matching the correlation.
No, and it's interesting though because when the reporter, a male, was in his car, it was 2 males. The woman and her baby, her
2
daughter,
females.
it's an older daughter, older person, and then younger, duplicating what her scenario was.
Down to the doll.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So they're trying to make you feel comfortable to let them
So,
in.
so there's mimicry there.
Yeah.
Quote. Not been for the feeling of overwhelming dread and fear, I probably would have asked these children in and given them some tea or hot chocolate to get them out of the bitter cold. So again, playing on sympathies.
Mhm.
And is it always cold?
I don't know. Something about them just seemed off. At this point, I hadn't made any noise. I hadn't shushed the dog or grumbled, nothing. I hadn't turned on any lights. These kids had no indicators I was at the door. The older one spoke. She had a voice that was mature, confident, strong, and accentless, just very plain. She held her head tilted downward so I couldn't see her eyes. She said, "We have to use your phone." I stood frozen in fear. How did she know I was there? She raised her head to face me directly, and that was when I saw her eyes. There was a reason I couldn't see them through her bangs before. They were black, or midnight blue, or a dark, dark purple. They were otherworldly. She said, "Our mother is worried." As someone who has always been interested in creepy stories, I knew what she was the second she looked at me through the door. I have never been one to believe in these things. As a staunch atheist, a skeptic when it comes to the paranormal, I had written off many a ghost story from friends and family members eager to tell their tale. I didn't believe in it. Still, I couldn't rationalize my way out of this. I was standing with nothing but a thin wooden door between me and a black eyed kid. There was no questioning what was right in front of me. I did not answer her. Slowly and silently, I backed away from the door, Lucy still cowering at my ankles. She kept talking. "Just let us in to use your phone." I took another step back, and with that step, the tone changed. At first, she seemed polite. When I took that second step back, she became commanding, almost hostile. "We're not going to hurt you. If we wanted to do that, we would have broken in. I'll ask again. May we come in and use your phone?" Lucy snarled at the door, and I inched backwards though something inside me seemed to be slowly pulling me back toward the door. It wasn't a physical pulling so much as a subconscious need to go back and let them in. I got to my room, covered the window, locked the door, sat there in the dim light of the nightlight. I heard her call me back to the door once more, then quiet. I didn't go back to sleep that night and haven't slept right since. I know from reading about them that BEKs can't just come in without permission. I know they haven't hurt anyone, but I still fear I'll be the exception. When I told my husband, he said it was just a dream. He keeps telling me to forget it, but this lingering feeling of sadness and dread when the house is silent at night, and this fear of a knock on the door tells me otherwise. End quote. Yeah,
Mm.
it's a lot in it.
It is. It's interesting though that she says that they don't hurt anyone because a lot of
Yeah.
other stories say otherwise.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, I was just, but I mean, it goes back to that subconscious pull.
Sure.
It goes back to like a hypnotic feeling. So,
Maybe the voice puts you in a trance, but they're subliminally like still.
yeah. I mean, and how did they know that she was on the other side of the door? Or were they just calling out in hopes that they would listen?
I feel like they knew.
They knew.
Yeah. Yeah. I would
What
say
if
they knew.
what if they're like was it the Predator and they have the heat sensor?
Could be. You never know.
All right. Encounter number 3. This one is a little bit long, so bear with me. Submitted by Hammer Hands. Quote, This incident took place about 13 years ago. I had just moved to a new city with my wife. We were in small town newlyweds from the Midwest, but we moved cross country to one of the biggest cities in the Southwest so I could attend graduate school. Being naive and new to city living, I habitually answer the door without a second thought. Never again after this. That would be what I would say too. First thing that should have tipped me off to the peculiarity of this situation was the fact that someone was knocking at 6 in the morning. The second thing that should have dawned on me is that this kid had to reach over the rather tall patio gate to unlock it or unlatch it. The knock on the door was startling. My wife and I were getting ready for work and a pretty normal routine. The moment I opened the door, I was overtaken with an inexplicable sense of fear. To this day, I can picture him. Teenager, average height, average build, knee length leather coat, short black hair, and sunglasses. Sunglasses at 6 a.m. struck me as odd. Even more odd was he was eating an apple. He was very polite and asked if he could come in and warm up. I said no, closed the door, slid the security chain into place. A moment later, another knock. I opened the now chained door, and before I could speak, he asked again if he could come in and warm up. No, I replied, and attempted to close the door. Before the door could shut, he put his hand out to stop the door on its hinges, and he looked directly into my eyes, still wearing his sunglasses, and said, "Can I at least get some ketchup for my apple?" F that, I reply, albeit a little confused. Get the hell out of here. My wife is calling the police. He takes a moment to let this information sink in, lowers his glasses, revealing eyes as black as obsidian, and says, "No, you won't be calling anybody." At that moment, I forced the door closed, locked it, and called out to my wife. She is scared shitless, hiding in the bedroom. All jacked up on adrenaline, I rip the curtains back and look out the window next to the door, and he's gone. Absolutely no trace of him. I go out to the patio and check the gate. It's still latched from the inside. What? Or that was effed up. I think to myself, and as I turn to enter the house, I notice a half-eaten apple lying on the ground. End quote.
No, I'm out.
That's a big bowl of nope soup.
That story is so much different than all. It's one.
Yeah.
There's sunglasses and there's an apple.
Yeah. So there's an actual object.
But there again, it's cold out.
It is. It's cold out.
We'll have
So
to do some more digging.
definitely have to do some more digging. Final encounter. And this is what happens if.
But hold on, one more note on that. So that almost seems like the eyes are actually what's hypnotizing, because he took the sunglasses down, showed the eyes, and said, "No, you won't." So
Yeah, but didn't he? But then at that moment, he was like, "Nope," and shut the door.
yeah,
But
it's
also,
like
it doesn't.
attempt.
Also, okay, let's do this last encounter, and then we'll
Yes,
discuss. Then we'll discuss it because there's a lot that I feel like we have to unpack.
Let's go.
All right, final encounter. This is what happens if you let them in.
All right.
Supposedly. This final encounter comes from the lineup.com. Quote, in January 2016, a woman in Vermont made the tragic mistake of letting two black-eyed children into her home. A blizzard was raging outside when she heard a faint knocking at her door. A boy and girl stood there, shivering, begging to use her phone. Unnerved by their presence, the woman nevertheless let them in and went to retrieve her phone. After the children walked into the light of the family room, the woman realized their eyes were completely black. As she stared at them in horror, her husband's nose began to bleed at the same time that the power suddenly went out. After what felt like an eternity, the children spoke in unison, saying their parents had arrived. The woman watched as the two quietly left her house and entered a nondescript black car with a man in a suit. Not long after the strange encounter, the woman's husband was diagnosed with severe skin cancer. The woman began to suffer from regular nosebleeds and an onslaught of other medical issues. She's convinced her failing health, along with her husband's, is the result of the black eyed children she unwittingly let into their home. End quote.
So I did actually read this story today.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, it's kind of crazy. And this gives the theory, like there's so many different ways you could spin this. Um, so let's go to the discussion
Well, and even
discuss.
the skin cancer itself, I mean, that's something that, like, does it come from their eyes penetrating you? Like, I mean, skin, that's like
Well,
exposure.
Do they radiate UV?
Right. Like that's the thing. Like, are they, and that would give cause to human alien hybrid. Are they, some sort of experiment, albeit on Earth or from space, that is causing these children to produce radiation.
Look, the brown-eyed child.
Yeah, but they don't have any physical features if they were a hybrid that makes them look alien.
Other than their black eyes. But I mean,
different.
from what I've read is, aliens typically have more oval eyes. So, what do you guys think? Now that you've heard all the characteristics, done some of your own research, watched some TikTok videos, what do y'all think?
I think, me personally, I think it's a form of a demon.
Yeah. What do you think?
I don't know. I kind of like the whole energy vampire thing. I think they're actually their own thing.
I think I agree with that.
Mean, demons tend to possess, or you don't really hear too much of like its own form or trying to. I mean, then you would think more of like an apparition or something. I mean, these sound like pretty physical,
intelligent.
Beings.
Well, I mean,
it's eating an apple.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds
Apparently
physical.
They have an appetite.
Yeah, it sounds very physical, and going into it, I was more of the thought that it is a demon child, that that it is a something paranormal, spirit, something like that. But I mean, researching further into it, I'm a toss up between it being a prank, like just kids being kids, and it being something, prank mixed with a little bit of not alien, but
3-year-old child wearing black contacts.
Right. I mean, that's where it gets weird. Like that's where it gets, like, the older kids that can be like, yeah, it's kind of a prank, but it's weird for me.
I don't think kids would even think to date their outfits.
True, that's true. Although the one said that they were modernized, wearing clothing of the time. I mean, it's just weird. I don't necessarily think that it is, demonic. I think it's leaning more towards like an energy vampire. Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely not anything good.
Definitely not.
No, well, what makes me lean more towards the thought of it being something demonic is the fact that they're very strong in their urges to take possession.
Yeah. They want to use your phone.
They're very demanding.
Well, the better question, I think, is why are they so insistent on getting into the houses? I think one of the stories I was reading, said accidents and things were happening afterwards, but
Mhm.
it sounded like they actually came back more than once. So it wasn't like a one and done deal.
It sounds, I mean, then that's why it sounds like aliens, but I don't think it's aliens. I mean, I'm so wishy-washy, y'all. I'm so sorry. But I'm all over the place because there is so many, each encounter's so similar, but it's
But
so
different.
different.
Mhm.
Like we might have one encounter that gears us more towards alien or governmental experiment. And then we might have one that gears us more towards demonic or ghost or, so there's so many different, they're very, very similar, but they're very, very different.
Yeah.
And it's definitely, I mean, and when I started the research on this, I went in thinking, like I said, demon, like something dark. But I mean, it is dark still, but doing the research and working on all this, I'm definitely been swayed away from that. So it's interesting.
Tell us what you think.
Yeah, let us
Drop
know.
us a comment.
Let us know
Explain
in the
why.
comment if you're watching on Spotify or Amazon. Head over to our Facebook and let us know what you think, or our YouTube. But y'all got anything else? That was
Some confusion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like I want to go research more now.
Yeah.
It was definitely like, what a way to kick us off, though.
All right.
I was trying to look, because I love all things horror for movies, so I was trying to look up to see what kind of movies I can watch, and I only found one that came up, but I didn't.
Yeah. Any recommendations? None yet.
Not on that. not on that topic.
Speaking of topics, do you have a topic for next week?
I do. Next week we will be discussing the Vatican.
Ooh. Haunted or not haunted?
Well, I kind of want to look up now and see if there's any
black-eyed children at the Vatican
investigation that the Vatican has done, with the exorcisms and whatnot.
Oh man,
Hey,
and we'll let you know if we find
no
anything
better place
else.
to look.
But yeah, well, there you have it. The legend of black-eyed kids. If they come a knocking, will you answer the door? Would you let them in? Until next time, y'all come back now, you hear?